Everyone has heard of Pennywise, the terrifying clown who haunts the children of Derry. But what if I told you the real story behind him is far darker than anything Stephen King could imagine? A tale not spun from fiction, but a hidden truth that connects the horror of IT to the darkest corners of reality. Pennywise isn't just a character from a book or a movie. He's a symbol, a presence, a manifestation of something ancient and evil that transcends time itself. This story begins long before the first page of IT was written, long before the movie adaptations brought terror to life on the screen. It begins in a town where secrets are buried deep beneath the earth, a town haunted by a presence older than its people, a presence that feeds on fear itself. Pennywise isn't simply a clown. He is a monster, a nightmare made flesh, a reflection of everything that is wrong with the town of Derry. For years, Derry, Maine, has been known as a quiet town, home to a tightly knit community, where neighbors greet each other on summer evenings and children play in the streets. But beneath this surface of tranquility lies a dark truth, something that has haunted this place for generations. A force, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Pennywise was not born from the mind of a writer. He didn't come to life in a lab, nor was he created by a single individual. Pennywise is the culmination of fear itself. He is a being forged in the dark crevices of ancient legend, an entity whose existence can be traced back centuries before the town of Derry even existed. Clowns, often seen as symbols of joy and entertainment, were twisted in the minds of the people who created the myth. But clowns were also deeply unsettling. Hidden behind painted smiles and unsettling makeup, they were figures who could hide anything beneath their colorful facades. They were often used to perform tricks, deceive the unsuspecting, and entertain the masses. But in some cultures, they were also feared, for the clown was also the trickster, a figure who could not be trusted. The story of Pennywise the clown starts long before the 1950s. Some believe he is a manifestation of a greater evil that predated even Derry itself. According to obscure texts and reports, Pennywise's origins trace back to a horrific series of events that occurred when the first settlers arrived in America. The Native American tribes who lived in the area spoke of a creature that had taken on the form of a jester, a twisted, demonic figure who would steal the souls of children, feeding on their fear and wreaking havoc on anyone who dared to confront it. As European settlers arrived, they unknowingly built Derry on cursed land, the land where this ancient evil had once thrived. Pennywise, or whatever entity he was, thrived on fear. He wasn't just a monster to be slayed. He was a nightmare, an eternal predator that could only survive by consuming the terror of those who lived in his domain. Over the years, Derry has been the site of numerous unexplained disappearances and deaths. The timeline of Derry's tragedies is almost too staggering to believe. Incidents that seem to repeat themselves eerily on a cycle, like clockwork. In 1840, a family was found missing, their house still warm, with no sign of struggle, just an empty dwelling and an unsettling sense of dread that lingered in the air. Neighbors reported hearing laughter coming from the woods near their home, a sound that echoed unnervingly in the distance. It was described as unnatural, as though the sound came not from a human being, but from something far darker. The same pattern of disappearances occurred throughout the decades, from the early 1900s to the present day. Over time, these events became ingrained in the town's history, woven into the folklore and whispered about in fearful tones. But there was one constant in all of these stories: the figure of the clown. According to town records, there was one common thread. Each disappearance seemed to coincide with the presence of a dark, laughing figure who was always seen just before the children went missing. Local legends grew over time, with tales of a man in a white face, wearing a red nose, and offering balloons to anyone who would take them. This figure was seen in the shadows in the alleys by the riverside and even on the outskirts of town, waiting for his next victim. It wasn't just children who felt this presence. Parents and townspeople alike reported strange occurrences, dreams of clowns, shadows that followed them, cold winds that seemed to brush past them when no one was around. The more people tried to ignore it, the stronger Pennywise became. Derry was trapped in an unbreakable cycle of death and horror, fueled by fear. As we delve deeper into the real story of Pennywise, we discover a chilling truth. Pennywise has been seen by more than just the children of Derry. He has been witnessed by adults, by the very people who were supposed to protect the children. In the 1950s, during one particularly dark period, several residents reported seeing Pennywise in public spaces, sitting in the back of theaters, standing in alleyways, and even watching through windows. One of the most disturbing accounts comes from Joseph Halloran, a retired police officer who worked in Derry in the 1960s. Halloran recalls a disturbing night when he and his partner were called to investigate a disturbance at the local carnival. When they arrived, they found an abandoned tent, and the carnival appeared to be empty. But what disturbed them wasn't the emptiness. It was the faint sound of laughter echoing from within the tent. As they approached, Halloran recalls seeing a pale face peering out from the shadows, a grotesque smile stretched across the figure's face. It wasn't a man, Halloran later said. It was something else, something that looked human but wasn't. The laughter continued, but when they rushed inside to confront the figure, they found nothing but an old balloon, eerily still, swaying in the wind. It wasn't the only encounter of its kind. People began to report sightings of Pennywise not just in Derry, but in nearby towns as well. There were reports of him at carnivals, at birthday parties, and even in the halls of local schools. In each case, those who saw him described an overwhelming sense of dread and unease that washed over them. And with each encounter, another child would disappear. The most disturbing aspect of Pennywise's true origin is that he is not simply a being who feeds on fear. Pennywise is a curse, a force of nature that thrives on suffering, pain, and anguish. His existence is tied to Derry in ways that go far beyond the events of the 1950s or 1960s. Derry was built on cursed land that had once been home to Native American tribes. Long before the Europeans arrived, this land was the site of ritualistic practices, rituals that were meant to summon the spirits of the earth and appease the gods. But something went horribly wrong during these ceremonies. A powerful and dark entity was awakened, something that had been lying dormant for centuries. The rituals inadvertently summoned a force that was not of this world, an entity of pure malevolence, a being that could take on any form it desired. For generations, this entity lay in wait, feeding off the fear and sorrow of those who lived on the land. As the town of Derry grew, so did the curse. Pennywise, or whatever his true name may be, is a manifestation of that ancient evil. He is not bound by the laws of time or space, but is instead a being that exists outside the realms of reality. He takes on the form of a clown to lure in children, to make them feel comfortable, to let down their guard before he strikes. The terrifying truth is that Pennywise is not just a monster. He is a symbol of everything that has gone wrong in Derry, everything that has been buried beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. And as long as the curse remains, Pennywise will continue to haunt the town, feeding on the fear of the innocent. As we reach the end of this story, one truth remains. Pennywise is not gone. The clown may have disappeared from the public eye, but the curse that binds him to Derry is still very much alive. It is not the town itself that is cursed, but the land beneath it. The malevolent force that took on the form of Pennywise has not been vanquished. It has merely taken a new shape, waiting for the next generation to feed on. Pennywise may never truly disappear, for he is not a creature that can be destroyed. He is a reflection of the darkness that lies within the hearts of all men, a symbol of everything we fear and everything we dare not face. As long as we continue to live in fear, as long as we remain haunted by the darkness, Pennywise will remain. And one day, he will return, not as a clown, but as the manifestation of every nightmare we've ever had, lurking just beyond the edge of our vision.